Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of the Bible. Wait, what? Hey, I'm here with Jeanie again.
Yes, you
working
are.
our way through the Gospel of Luke. Luke chapter 6 today.
Yeah, and I'm going to sum up this one a lot because I am
Sure
running
you
out
will.
of time.
Come on, Jeanie. Okay, I'm going to shut my mouth. Let's see. If
You
she
do
can-
talk a lot,
I
by
know.
the way.
So let's see if she can. I won't add in anything she doesn't ask me, folks. That's how the plan is for this chapter.
No. Okay.
Let's see how we go.
So many questions, so little time. Okay, this is about the Sabbath.
Yes, it is. It's a discussion about the
It's
Sabbath.
a big discussion about the Sabbath where basically Jesus says the Son of Man is no slave to the Sabbath.
Mm-hmm.
He is in charge because what happened here, the disciples are busted pulling off heads of grain, rubbing them in the hands and then eating them. And then some Pharisees are like, why are you doing that? That's breaking a Sabbath rule. That's
Working on the Sabbath. Harvesting is working.
Yeah, harvesting. Okay. And so then Jesus starts to tell them off. Well, does he tell them off? The Son
I
of
think
Man
he
is no
does.
slave.
Pretty cryptically tells them off, yeah.
There's two accounts here, two Sabbaths, things go wrong for the Pharisees.
It's actually multiple times.
Yeah.
The Sabbath, as I'm preparing for next, no, I'm not going to say it, but there's lots of times when the principle of the Sabbath, multiple times in the Gospels where it comes into topic with Jesus.
All right. Okay. I'm going to have a grand question for that.
Mm-hmm.
But the next Sabbath is he goes and he heals a man who's just been sitting around listening.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like they're waiting for Jesus to do something in this. And he knew what they were up to, what they're thinking. They want to bust him. They want to catch him out. And he speaks to the man with a crippled hand, get up and stand here before us. And then then Jesus asks this question, what kind of action suits the Sabbath best, doing good or doing evil, helping people or leaving them helpless? And no one can answer anything. He looks them each in the eye, it says. And the guy holds out his hand at Jesus' command and he heals it. And then the Pharisees were beside themselves with anger and started plotting how they would get even with him. Why does so much happen on the Sabbath? And why does Jesus say the Son of Man is no slave to the Sabbath? He's in charge.
So the Sabbath was always a big deal to the Jews because it was unique to them. The Sabbath was a symbol of their rescue from Exodus because they had been slaves where they never had a day off. And so it was a way of God rescuing them and then getting them to trust in him as opposed to trusting in their own ability to make wealth. So that was the downside of working on the Sabbath, was that it actually demonstrated a lack of trust in God. You trust that I will provide for you. Over time, what had happened is they'd turned it into a religious act that had lost the trust in lost the fact that it was linked to trusting that God would provide, and more thinking that keeping the Sabbath was actually in and of itself a work that earned our salvation. So we actually done the opposite. Does that make sense? Instead of trusting God, it was actually a sign of trusting ourselves. Oh, I don't keep the Sabbath, I'm more holy. So I'm actually trusting in myself rather than in God. And Jesus is putting that back the other way and saying, you've got it back to front. The way that Eugene Peterson says it, they're slightly different. The more traditional versions will say, you've got it wrong. Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath, which is his way of saying it's there to point and help you. You're not there to serve it. You don't serve the Sabbath. The Sabbath, the principle, serves you. It helps you to point to God. And so he's just rectifying that, linked with this story of the healing of the man with leprosy, the healing of the man with his hand, is Jesus trying to say, you've become so obsessed with this keeping of the Sabbath that you don't even realize that you won't do good things for other people on the Sabbath. How can you call yourself one of God's followers if you don't do good things? In fact, he would say that's one of the best things you should do with the Sabbath is feed others, care for others, heal others, all that sort of stuff.
Okay.
Did I answer it sufficiently in our short little time we have?
You did answer that sufficiently.
But
why is Jesus... I've heard this before, that Jesus is the Sabbath.
Yes, he is the Sabbath. Hebrews talks about him being like the fulfillment of the Sabbath because we enter our rest. The Sabbath was, once again, this point of meaning I'm going to rest in God. I'm going to trust in God as my provider. And so Hebrews talks about entering our Sabbath rest, and it takes the daily act of a particular day of the week and extends it up and says that one day a week, while it was in and of itself an act that showed you trusted God, it actually also, the Sabbath itself points forward to an ultimate fulfillment, which is found in Jesus. that he is our Sabbath rest. In him, we don't have to strive and struggle to get earn our favor with God. It's not about doing a whole lot of religious requirements to earn our favor with God. He becomes the fulfillment of the Sabbath because we trust in his work that he's already done.
Jesus is the true rest.
He's the true rest. He's the fulfillment of the Sabbath, yes.
Fulfillment of the Sabbath. Okay. Now, you said something very interesting before. You said the Sabbath was not made for man.
But man, yeah, the Sabbath was not made for man. What did I say? Sabbath was not made for man, but man for the Sabbath. Whichever way.
No, it's the other way around, isn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Can you say it properly?
Yeah, let me
You
say
heard
it right. I said it right the first time. Getting brain fried now. Man was not made for the Sabbath was made for man.
Wow. If Jesus is the true rest, say it one more time.
Are you about to say Jesus was made for us?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Good call.
Okay, but say it one more time.
The Sabbath was not made for man was not made for the Sabbath, but the Sabbath was made for man.
So man was not made for
Sabbath.
Jesus, God.
Yes.
But the Sabbath
Jesus
rest, Jesus was made for man.
Yeah. Shows the grace of God that he gave up so much to give us freedom.
That's extraordinary.
It is. Linking those, I've never heard of that, Jeannie. Link those two together, but that's really good.
Yeah.
Because Jesus is the ultimate Sabbath rest, yes.
But the entire scriptures shows
that story, doesn't it?
It shows us that story, that God is constantly coming for us.
Yep, always reaching out to us. From Genesis 3, Adam, where are you? Always reaching out, trying to meet us at our point of need and rescue us.
Yeah, because right from the beginning, Genesis, which you always go to, it's not humans that go after God.
That's right.
It's God goes after the humans.
Yep. Adam, where are you? Yep.
Yeah. Wow, you just made me. I'd never thought that before.
I've never thought of that before either, but that's really good.
Okay. Oh, I'm so excited by that. Now, where do I go now?
Where do you go now?
There was something else. The showbread. Why does he not get in trouble for eating the showbread?
Why did David not get in trouble for eating the showbread? Well, he should have. According to pure, strict Mosaic law, he should have.
Why does Jesus not get angry? Jesus doesn't say he didn't do wrong.
Jesus just uses it as an example to say, look, you could have followed the letter of the law and still missed the spirit of the law.
Okay, that's from verse 3 to 4 that we're reading there.
Which is linked to David, one of the days when David's fleeing from Saul, and he goes and gets Goliath's sword from Ahimelech the priest or Ahitub the priest, whoever it is, and he flees. And he gets some bread, and the bread is, we can have the bread that wasn't behind, which normally what would happen is the priest would eat that. After 7 days on display, the priest's family would eat that, and he gets him have that bread, which was, strictly speaking, law-breaking. And Jesus it's as good example as any, as you'll find that you can keep the letter of the law and still miss the spirit behind the law. And Jesus is trying to say that wasn't wrong. That law of showbread, don't legalize it as if you're ticking a box. There was a spirit behind that, which is David was in need. And the priest was able to give David what he needed in that moment as he was fleeing from Saul. So he gave it to him. Like
Christ will become known as the high priest. He's able to give us what we need in that moment. That's what that's setting up.
That's what it's setting up. It's pushing forward to that. Hebrews picks up on that, of course, in great depth. Yeah.
That's fascinating. Okay, then moving on here, he talks about the apostles.
Yeah, he starts to choose the 12.
He chooses the 12. 2 questions, well, one question, but what is the difference, or is there any difference between an apostle and a disciple?
I think essentially the disciples have their names changed to apostles after the resurrection, the sent ones. So they're following him there. His disciples are that follow people who just follow a rabbi around, but then they get sent out by Jesus, and so they become known as apostles. And then, of course, there's these ones and others who are also called apostles, including women. So in the New Testament. But it starts with these disciples become the first apostles.
Right, because to me, disciples is learning,
yes.
Apostles is learned.
Or I'd say learned or continues to learn. But the pure meaning of apostle is the one who is sent. That's where it comes from, sent out.
Okay, well, they're learning as disciples and then they're sent out as apostles.
Yes, that's
because
right.
they have learnt what they needed to learn in the 3 years.
Yes, although I would argue they continue to learn always, because we all do. But you're right, yes, there's a lot of preparatory phase, and now you're ready to go. You have your qualification, off you go. Yeah.
Okay, why does he select 12?
I think that's just the number of governance in the Old Testament, 12 tribes. It's used as a governmental number, so he's probably done it for that reason. He's trying to set these up as a new Israel. He's trying to show a new Israel. And to do that, one way to do that is to replace the 12 sons of Israel with 12 more sons of Israel.
All right, okay. Okay, got it. Yep. He also goes up on the mountain to pray.
Yep. There's a Moses component to it as well.
Yeah, Moses, and he spends all night in prayer before God. I have to wonder, who's he praying for? Or why is he praying? Is he praying for his own help, or is he praying, should I select these 12?
That's what I've always thought. It seems in this story it seems to be linking to, who should I choose, Lord? Help me out, Father. Who am I to pick? That's the sort of, to me, that's the base reading of the text. He went up, he came back, so he spends the night prayerfully seeking his Father on who of these large crowd are the ones that he has to pick.
Because we've always thought that from the beginning, when Simon is called out, he's made a disciple straight away. But Luke implies he's made a disciple, or as apostles later on.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah, well, they're not apostles at this point. They're still disciples. It's his core group. Yeah, but Simon's in that group. Yeah.
He designated this 12 as apostles, it says.
Yeah.
Now this
it does it? Okay. Yeah, okay. That's because later on Luke's writing this and these are known as apostles. But I think that the New Testament still, the Gospels still predominantly call them disciples all the way through Jesus' life, not apostles. This might be the only time when the word apostles is used.
All right, okay. Now I just noticed here going down this list, these are different names.
There are different names, yeah.
Why?
I think they're just variations of different Jewish names. So I think that's what scholars will say. I think but there could be actually different lists, but I don't suspect. So I think sometimes it's just that Jews had different names in different contexts.
Because there's no Thaddeus.
Not in this one, yeah.
But there's 2 Judases.
Yep. Yeah, you could sit down with Google, sit down with some scholars, and they'll match them all up, and you'll realise that I don't think they can 100% watertight say this one represents that person's name, but having different names in Jewish culture and not being known by different names was not uncommon.
All right, okay. Talk to me about Iscariot, that word, that name. Is that new? What does it mean?
You're testing me now. I think
yes.
Does it come from the word Sakari?
I don't know. I read it, but I can't remember.
I wonder if it. No, don't think it does. I was going to say, the Sakari were a sect of zealots who, which is the word Sakari is dagger, and they were like a zealot terrorist group that went with the Romans, and I think Iscariot might be linked to that word.
Yeah, right. Okay, don't they go that angle on the Chosen?
Yeah, but it's not. It's Zebedee who's a
It's
Sakari.
the other one. Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Z, they call him in The Chosen. He's a Sakari, I think. I don't think it's Judas although Judas was linked with them because, yes, he came into it via Z, I think, or vice versa.
They were brutal at the time. They were
the
terrorists.
Yeah, they were basically running, jumping in the middle of the night and stabbing Roman soldiers in their camps and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, so in The Chosen, Judas was linked with them too. But I think that's where the word comes from. It's linked to the word Sakari, I think.
Okay. All right. We'll just move on there.
Yeah, because you'd have to go and study it. But go and do that, folks. It is interesting.
So Jesus comes down off the mountain with them and he stands on a plain surrounded by his disciples. And soon a huge group of people come and join him. And then Jesus launches into this lovely
Sermon on the Plain.
Wait a minute. Why is it not the Sermon on the Mount?
Because it was in Matthew's Gospel.
Yeah. And here it's on the plain.
So a few options. One, he did it multiple times, which is very likely and possible.
I think this is generally what he preached.
I think this is generally what he preached, yeah. That's what I think is most likely the case. It's just that Matthew has just chosen to sum it up and put it on a mountain so that it fits with the Jewish understanding of replacing Moses, bringing the law on the mountain.
Oh, and a plain because it's accessible to
all people. Yeah, I think that's how I'd view it. And very likely Jesus, I preached the same thing multiple times. I preached twice yesterday and I preached essentially the same message, but it brought different nuance into it depending on the crowd and who was there, and that's just how we all speak.
Because it is different here.
It's different.
Yeah.
And he brings woes into the Beatitudes here that aren't in Matthew's Gospel. So he mixes and matches. To me, that's a sign of the Gospel's integrity, not its lack of integrity.
Yeah, and I think it also serves the purpose of whatever Luke is doing.
Yes, pointing the direction.
Yeah,
yep.
Everyone can come there. A mountain is exclusive.
Yep.
Plain in the open.
Yep,
yeah, and it also, what Jesus, remember, Matthew, he is coming from the kingly angle which we talked about in previous chapters hours ago. I don't know. And he's trying to set up Jesus in from the kingly angle. And in Luke, he's setting them up as just a man.
Yep.
As a son of Adam, son of God.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, I think so.
And so the plain is
an accessible thing.
Plain.
Yep, it's plain.
Yeah.
Plain is plain. Yep, it's for everyone.
Yes, as he says, you're blessed when you've lost it all. God's kingdom is there for finding. These are upside down kingdom
These are
things.
the Beatitudes, the values that are opposite to the way that most of the world operates. Yeah.
Yes, you're blessed when the tears flow freely, joy comes with the morning. This is similar, or it's a continuation rather of what John the Baptist was saying. Can you see that?
Yes. Yep. The care for others.
Yeah.
Yep. Feed others, give them a cloak, all that sort of stuff. Yep.
Yep. And here, look at this. You're blessed when you're
Ravenously hungry.
And Jesus was that.
Yep. Yep.
But if you're hungry for God, you're blessed. That's really what it's ultimately saying here. Then you're ready for the messianic meal. And that's what John the Baptist was. He was like the appetizer to make you hungry for the real meal.
Thing. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
And count yourself blessed every time someone cuts you down or throws you out. These are hard things to take on board, aren't they? To count yourself blessed when the world seems to be coming at you in different painful ways.
Yep, it is.
But
certainly upside down values.
Yeah. And that is ultimately what Christ is asking us, isn't it? To live differently, to see things differently.
Yep, see the world differently, that they believe that there is enough to go around, that God is good, that we don't have to hoard. We don't have to keep for ourselves, choose for ourselves. That's the upside down kingdom.
Yeah. And he says here, it's trouble ahead if you think you have it all made, talking to your pride. So in that, the scriptures talk a lot about how pride comes before a fall, or all of those things, doesn't it?
It sure does.
I'm going to skip ahead here because I have to pick my children up from school. Sometimes the real life does cut in, though, as much as I love discussing this. We've still got one more chapter to go.
We do have another chapter to go. I'll be quick tomorrow.
One last part here. Jesus says something absolutely shocking. Love your enemies. Can you explain in 2 minutes or less what that means? Or why would he say that?
Because that is the fundamental key that will break down the problems of the human sin, which is enemies happen because of human sin, and the only way to counteract it is to not respond in kind. When you respond through love and act out of love, it breaks down barriers. It won't guarantee that your enemy will love you, but it will guarantee that things can't continue to escalate because you have not responded in kind. You have heaped burning coals on the head, as he says in the Sermon on the Mount.
But how can a person who has been really abused in life, or horrible things have happened to them, how can Jesus really ask them? Why would Jesus ask them to do that?
Yeah, good question. It
just seems so backwards.
It seems backwards, yeah. And a lot of people ask that question. It seems mean. So a lot of people ask that question thinking that somehow this means that loving your enemies somehow means that you just say that it doesn't matter what they did to you. That wouldn't be justice. God's also a God of justice, and he will right every wrong. So there's nothing wrong with acknowledging that that person has been abusive or that person has harmed us in some way. That's a valid assumption. But as well as that, we can draw on the unconditional love of God, which enables us to be able to love our enemies in the same way that God uses his love to love us. As Paul will say, while we were still God's enemies, Christ loved us. So because Christ has shown us and loved us despite our sin and our being his enemy, now we can and are empowered and graced to do so, to love others with that same love.
That's a good answer.
Doesn't make it easy,
no,
but it's possible.
Mm-hmm. There's lots to think about, lots to learn from in that.
Yeah.
And I love this section here, love your enemies, because of what John the Baptist has already set up. What we said before, this new world where the tax collector is going to be fair.
Yep.
The soldiers aren't going to boss you around and do mean things to you. And John even says there's somebody who's going to be coming after me that's greater and that is going to really change things up. And here you can see.
Yep.
Not only has he answered all the things that John the Baptist has said, here's Jesus changing it up. Reversing it, putting it on its head, living by different values, yes. Yeah. No further questions.
We'll skip the rest of that chapter because we're out of time. There's another 2 stories in there yet. So tomorrow, Luke chapter 7, last one. Talk to you then. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Bible. Wait, what? Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast so you don't miss a single episode. And you can also find us on all the socials. Just search The Bible. Wait, what? And to find out more about our church, just search C3 Camden, C3 Picton, or C3 Thirroul on the web or on the socials. Thanks for being with us today, and we look forward to talking to you on the next episode of The Bible. Wait, what?